Not too long ago, big studios would occasionally take a crack at making a film based on the premise of a video game called an adaptation. These projects would commonly fall short of expectations, either mess with redeeming qualities, or a baffling abomination. They always felt like they missed the mark and something vital was lacking. Movies like Doom 2005, the Resident Evil movies, Assassin's Creed, and many more. It felt like the film industry failed to understand the appeal of video games or how to translate them to the big screen.
They're brothers. They're plumbers.
Though in recent years, this trend has changed, and quite dramatically at that, with video game adaptations releasing exponentially, and a lot of them landing well with audiences and critics. But to be honest, I always found this whole concept of adaptations to be a bit strange. Video games seem to be a well-rounded artistic medium, which can stand on its own without these stories needing to be realized on the big screen. I can understand the logic behind adapting a book to see the story fully realized. It's a standard practice for successful fiction novels and has been for some time. Film features many artistic elements that books lack, so there's a lot of room for expression that can elevate the story to new levels. Adding a visual or audible medium to a story is quite a game changer. Since these additional storytelling elements are so vast, you can get completely different interpretations from two directors adapting the exact same story. Adapting video games to film or TV is when it becomes a bit strange. You begin to enter a weird grey area of artistic expression. With a video game, you already have everything a film does and much more. You have score, acting, cinematography, color grading, and so on, but you also have that amazing thing present in video games that no other medium can replicate. That personal and interactive element that allows for unique choices, organic narrative storytelling, and personal expression. That immersive feeling that connects you with the world and characters on a far deeper level just through the whimsical details or the stressful challenges you overcame. The satisfaction of crafting a perfect action set piece in Devil May Cry. The gut-wrenching guilt you feel slaying a beautiful colossi in Shadow of the Colossus. The dreading atmosphere of exploring the streets of Silent Hill 2. These are experiences you can't replicate with a primarily passive medium of storytelling, because the story is reliant on that input from the player.
Just follow the line. How simple is that?
Having an actor go through the same motions on screen doesn't cut it. If you adapted the aforementioned examples to the big screen, you might be able to squeeze some emotion out of them, but they'd still lack that special sauce that makes them truly unique. It's hard to remove a cornerstone and still have the building stand on its own. Even your standard AAA games have this problem to a certain extent. They may feature dissonance between cutscenes and gameplay that don't align particularly well or have much interactive storytelling, but that interactivity, however scripted or minor, still adds nuance and immersion unique to video games. So why do I bring all this up? Why discuss something that clearly just isn't for me? Well, ever since video game stories were a thing, there's been the stigma towards them as a lesser medium of storytelling that irks me. That these stories aren't true narratives until they're on the big screen. The whole "are video games art" discussion. If you're familiar with my content, you may be able to guess where I stand on the matter. At a certain point in time, I could have understood the argument that video games don't provide the production value that film and TV do. You know, back when video games looked like this. Though now the industry is at a point where we're able to experience breathtaking cinematic set pieces and lifelike graphical marvels, so I don't think this argument holds up today. Unfortunately, I think this lesser art stigma has caused some game developers to veer towards more linear, narrative-driven movie-like experiences to move closer to that status of true storytelling, aimed at audiences that are familiar with the narrative structures of film and TV shows. Which doesn't make much sense when you think about it, because games have been telling great and novel stories for decades now, without the care of being seen as true stories by other audiences. Despite being less interesting mechanically, we have received some truly incredible stories in these more cinematic video games, one of which being The Last of Us. This was a point in video game history where people all pointed to a mainstream, narrative-driven experience and said, "This is a good story, this is a piece of art." And they were right. The Last of Us has a wonderful, gripping story with fantastic characters and an immersive world. It doesn't have much beyond its narrative, but it's a good story native to a video game. The gameplay of being a brutal, cutthroat survivor in a kill or be killed world adds to that narrative immersion, which you're lacking by removing it. When I see this level of craft and passion from the actors, writers, game designers, and etc. all going into a video game, I don't think, wow, this would look great in a film or TV show. I think, wow, this game has a great story. The acting and other forms of storytelling present in these games aren't invalidated because you experience it on a PlayStation or Xbox. You don't need to move a story from a video game to a TV show to validate it. It's kind of funny how it doesn't go the other way around, right? Avatar had a weird video game on the Xbox 360, yeah, now the story is true art. It's clear that The Last of Us show is a great piece of television. The writers have gone a long way to flesh out the characters and adjust some story beats to help the narrative flow a bit smoother in a format like this. It's clear that the creators are passionate about Joel and Ellie's story and hold this story to a high level of respect. The show also provides an opportunity for audiences who haven't played the original game to experience the story in a fresh way. And to be honest, that accessibility is a great thing. But even with all that, there's something that just doesn't sit right with me. I've heard some critics, journalists, and YouTubers say that this is the definitive way to experience The Last of Us story because of these improvements. And while that might be correct for those more at home with TV than video games, there's something about replacing a video game story that gets under my skin. I believe there's a better way to adapt a video game than just refilming the cutscenes, as I feel it's preferable to create a new piece of art that supplements the original than to create what is essentially a replacement. Because when you do, you're lacking the hours of interactive gameplay the original has to help further develop themes, characters, and settings, which create that interactive immersion I mentioned earlier.
That's a giant ram. You guys were like some idol worshippers.
When it came to sports, hell yeah.
An adaptation is always going to be in a losing battle if it just adapts the story because of these reasons. The Last of Us show can't replace that immersion created by being Joel.
Rook. Rook.
What I think should be done with these adaptations is to lean heavier into the mediums they're moving into, and this appears to be the most successful method thus far. Instead of remaking a video game story with some minor improvements, taking the foundations of that narrative and shaping it for the relative medium is a much better choice, holding the game's world with a high level of respect and crafting something that supplements the original material within that world it created. The point about respect is key because it appears there's a fine line between respecting the source material and creating a unique story. Otherwise, you get something not even vaguely recognizable as an adaptation. When the showrunner of the Halo TV show said that none of the writers even looked at the games, and then the show released with all the Halo set design but lacked the emotion, atmosphere, or anything that people could identify with, illuminated that showrunners have to do at least a little bit of homework before creating an adaptation. Creating a unique story is great, but if a project is using the name and branding of a video game on the big screen, there needs to be some level of foundation used in telling the story. Otherwise, you get a narrative that's certainly unique, but isn't familiar in any way to fans of the source material. The crazy thing is, we've already had a pretty good Halo adaptation from a few years ago, a collection of short stories that help flesh out the universe and explore characters that the games wouldn't be able to. Halo Legends. Stories about both new and familiar characters and unique circumstances that focus on unexplored parts of the universe and carry with them that unmistakable Halo atmosphere and tone. The rule remains true: tell a story to supplement the original video game, not replace it. Out of the recent video game adaptations, I believe stories that have struck the balance between respect and originality have been the most successful artistically. Adaptations like Detective Pikachu, Sonic the Hedgehog, Cyberpunk, Castlevania, Arcane, the Mario movie, and many more are all extremely successful because they're interested in telling a unique story in their native medium to accommodate their source material. They build on the foundations of their video game counterparts and hold them in a high level of respect. Arcane is so successful because it explores the surprisingly deep and unique world of League of Legends in a way the game doesn't. This is why it's so successful with both fans of the game and those who have no connection to it. A similar argument can be made for the previous adaptations mentioned. The old age of video game adaptations is dead, and it died a few years ago. New adaptations and video game stories are being greenlit and released every year, and that number appears to be on the rise. Though it seems journalists need to announce the death of this era every time a new adaptation is released, for some reason, it's clear that adaptations are highly profitable and can be successful with new audiences and longtime fans if things are handled right. It's going to be interesting to see this landscape shift and how writers decide to adapt these stories for film and TV, because currently it's the Wild West. The adaptations that interest me the most are stories fit for the big screen with respect for the narrative and world of the source material. If a new TV show of a video game I like comes out and is largely just the cutscenes or the exact same story, I'm not particularly interested because it's never going to beat the original. It's always going to lack that immersive gameplay that elevates the story. It's a losing battle, and adaptations need to change the playing field if they want to be worthy of standing alongside the games they're adapting.